want to officially welcome you to the podcast, Professor Murray Stein. Thank you so much for joining me. It's really, really amazing to have you here today.
My pleasure, Annabelle.
So I thought we could begin then very, very, very briefly defining some key terms to help the listeners familiarize or refamiliarize themselves with Jungian psychology and some of Jung's work. First term, if you wouldn't mind briefly delineating it, individuation.
Individuation is a term that Jung came up with to speak about and write about the psychological and spiritual development of human beings from birth to grave and perhaps beyond. So it's a developmental idea. Mm-hmm. And it moves forward in several distinct stages. Jung describes first half of life, second half of life, stages of individuation or this development, psycho-spiritual consciousness. And then those two big stages are subdivided into a number of briefer stages or aspects. And if we want to, we could talk about some of those. But generally speaking, individuation is a developmental concept.
Okay, thank you. Second term, synchronicity. It's going to be very important for us.
Synchronicity is the falling together of a psychic event and a material event at a moment that is significant for the person experiencing it.
Okay.
Now these things happen all the time. We call them coincidences. You know, you're thinking about somebody and the phone rings. That's a coincidence. But it could also be a synchronicity if that's a very important phone call, a very important person in your life, and you haven't heard from them for a while. And whether we call it coincidence or synchronicity depends on significance, on the meaning factor.
Mm-hmm. And as I understand it, that there is meaning. Meaning is intrinsic, as you've just alluded to, but it's acausal. And I'd like to maybe explore this later on, the notion of causality, if it emerges. But I do find this fascinating, the notion of causality, acausality, meaning. So we can maybe explore that later. But I think that's important for people to understand, is that synchronicity for Jung had an acausal connecting principle, correct?
That's right. That's how he defines it.
Yeah. And the third term, Kairos, which is obviously the theme of this arc of the podcast, is a term that Jung used. How did Jung define and understand Kairos?
Well, Kairos isn't a term that Jung used a lot, but of course he knows the term and he uses it when it seems to fit the context of what he's writing about. It would be familiar to him from theology, probably, or Greek philosophy. It's a Greek word that means time. Greeks had two words for time, chronos and kairos. And chronos is linear time, and kairos is a special moment in time that is especially significant or augurs a new beginning or something special happening. So in theology, it's used in relation to God's will. You know, it was God's will for the Savior to be born. Lo and behold, Jesus was born in Bethlehem. So that was a moment of Kairos. So I found, in preparing for this today, I found an interesting quote from Hippocrates. He said, every Kairos is a chronos, but not every chronos is a Kairos.
Is that because Kairos necessarily occurs within chronological time?
That's right, exactly. So every Kairos is a moment in chronos, in linear time, but not all of linear time is a chronos, according to Hippocrates. I mean, one could argue that. One could say linear time is also chronos time, depending on your view, your metaphysical view of the meaning of time and the passage of time.
Yeah.
And of course, existence of time. What is time? That's a whole topic in itself. Does it really exist, or is it a construction that the human being is created in order to orient ourselves in the material world?
Well, the meaning of temporality is a life's work. I do actually have an essay that you sent me here, which we won't, I don't want to digress too much, but just for your reference, I have it in front of me. The four modalities of temporality and the problem of shame. And you do cite Ceres, Serres. Hinton cites Ceres as speaking of temporality as a folded and crumpled handkerchief.
Yes, that's nice.
I just think that's so beautiful. Maybe that'll weave back in to our conversation, because temporality is huge, and as I think you know, I'm sort of bewitched by it. Anyway, let's begin more officially with the quote that you sent me, which is really powerful, from Jung. Where an archetype prevails, we can expect synchronistic phenomena, which consist in a parallel arrangement of facts in time. The arrangement is not the effect of a cause, it just happens. So I guess I'm interested then in what it means for an archetype to prevail and how that then opens the field for synchronicity.
Well, again, we should define what archetype is.
Yes, that's also, yeah, pretty big one.
That's a big one.
Quite important.
Jung sometimes speaks of the archetypes as the basic building blocks of the human psyche. But the basic building blocks of the human psyche, he speculates, are also the basic building blocks of being itself, or reality. And so the psyche reflects structures in reality. That's the idea of microcosm and macrocosm, that the psyche is not different structurally speaking. And here comes geometry, structurally speaking, from the way reality is constructed, okay? So the archetypes reflect something very fundamental that emerges in the experience of a person at certain moments. When an archetype is constellated, you might not notice it so much, except that you would see yourself circling around a certain topic or a certain project or a certain wish or a certain expectation. So the Chinese say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So what the student is trying to do is constellate a relationship between student and teacher. The student needs a teacher, the teacher needs a student. And if the student prepares himself arduously and energetically, chances are better that a teacher will appear than if he doesn't or she doesn't. But on the other hand, the will and the ego by itself cannot constellate an archetype. The unconscious has to cooperate. So there are certain moments in life when certain archetypes are constellated more than at others. The trickster, for instance, is constellated much more during adolescence, midlife, these transitional moments where there's a kind of opening to the surprising and unexpected. Hermes will appear, and the mercurial aspect of life, the surprises and so on, enter, and the trickster goes to work. But there are other moments in life. A woman I know wanted to get pregnant. Okay, she's married. She and her husband wanted to get to have children, and she couldn't, and they couldn't, and they tried a number of. This was some years ago, before implantation and all that. They tried a number of techniques, including frequent intercourse, and it just didn't happen. So they did their part to constellate the archetype of, you could say, motherhood, pregnancy, motherhood, parenthood. That's a basic human experience. And women begin feeling that often at a certain age, a kind of requirement that's placed on them, but sometimes they reject it. We have a choice. But what they did was they heard about a special fountain of water in a place called Einsiedeln, Switzerland. It's a pilgrimage spot. Many people go there for special favors. There's a Black Madonna, they say prayers. And there's a fountain there that is famous for its ability to facilitate women who want to get pregnant. So you drink that water and pray, say a prayer, and it's supposed to help. And so they went and did that. And lo and behold, within a couple of weeks, she was pregnant.
Wow.
And how do you account for something like that? It's a kind of miracle. So miracles happen when an archetype is constellated and there is a synchronicity factor that gets involved. So we would say the water didn't cause her to get pregnant. It didn't impregnate her. There's no causal relationship between her pregnancy and drinking that water. It's a meaningful coincidence that at the time she drank the water and she was wanting to get pregnant and her husband was there with her, everybody was into it, the archetype became constellated and there was a synchronistic event. So we say, the ego has to do its part, working toward constellating certain aspects of human life, basic features, learning, having children, getting a career going, finding the right life partner. And when the person is ready and has done their work and the unconscious cooperates, you have a synchronicity. I know a couple who got married after meeting each other by accident on an airplane trip in the United States. By an incredible course of events, later made contact with each other, found that they really enjoyed each other's company and ended up getting married. And she came to my office and told me this story, and I almost fell off my chair. Wow, that's how you met your husband, just by chance. But she was ready, apparently he was ready, and within 6 months, they had decided to get married. I hope their marriage worked out, but they were ready. It was constellated.
Right.
Partnership is a constellation. We're built for that. So yeah, when a archetype is constellated properly and the unconscious is participating, then you can, chances are good, and this is statistic probability. The probabilities are greater that a synchronicity will occur than if an archetype is not constellated.
It's interesting. It's making me think more deeply of archetypes and what they are. As you mentioned, Jung referred to them as sort of building blocks, of the universe, not just of the psyche, but of the universe, the psyche and the universe being mirrors of each other and formed of the same stuff, which is basically mind. I'm wondering then if in certain places, like this place you mentioned in Switzerland, what's it called? Sorry, I should probably go there. Not to get pregnant, but just to go to a holy place.
Einsiedeln. It's about
No,
a 45-minute drive from Zurich. Einsiedeln.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'm wondering if in certain places like that and various other holy places, if these archetypal energies, if you will, it's almost like they're these unseen phenomena, but are like structurally actually there, like they're existent. It's not just a sort of abstract notion we've confabulated or constructed as an idea to, metaphorically gesture to something, but like, could these archetypes be actual like structural entities in an unseen realm that somehow literally like inform us? And maybe even going to certain places, you can participate in some sort of archetypal field where it literally informs your psyche and your DNA. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's so much here that we don't understand about the nature of consciousness, the nature of reality, of free will, fate, all of these things. But just in you relaying these stories, it got me thinking about archetypes and synchronistic phenomena, and whether there might be perhaps something causal. Perhaps there is something causal going on there.
Well, that would be a different type of explanation, causality. Well, since time immemorial, people have discovered these kinds of places that have a kind of magical quality to them, or special spiritual effects and take place. So it's very difficult to prove something like that from a materialistic scientific
Yeah, sure, but
angle.
that needs to go to bed. No, materialism needs to go to bed. Like wasting everyone's time.
But, I think pilgrimage spots that people have discovered and used for special purposes have proven themselves over and over again. So, based on human experience, it seems there's something to it, that there are special energies located in certain places on Earth. Uh, it starts to sound woo-woo after a certain point, but on the other hand, Jung would say,
Mm.
if human experience over time confirms something over and over again,
Mm.
take it seriously.
Well, it's
And
data, isn't it?
it's empirical. It
It's
happens.
empirical data.
It's empirical data.
Let's unpack this idea of causality a little bit. So you mentioned the arrangement is not the effect of a cause, it just happens. I really want to explore this notion of acausal, of things being acausal at a parallel level, and how we can have meaning can be generated without there being a causal connection. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll refer to Jung again. Jung was very interested in acausality, that is, phenomena that occur which can be looked at from two angles. An ABCD angle, A causes B, causes C,
Mhm.
causes D, and another angle which says there is a wholeness to the moment that includes all these factors that are thrown together in this moment in time. And this moment has meaning. That would be Kairos. This moment has meaning because all of these factors are thrown together at this particular moment. And that's what interested Jung so much in the I Ching.
Mm,
He wrote, I think around 1950, he wrote an introduction to the English translation of the Richard Wilhelm translation from Chinese of the I Ching. And Jung was very fond. He had used the I Ching for 25 or 30 years by that time. He used it on his own, for his own purposes. He used it with patients. And what he says is that there's an acausal relationship between throwing the coins or the yarrow stalks
mm,
and the result that it offers, which is one of the 64 hexagrams. So you throw the coin 6 times and you see that it indicates hexagram number 10. And there are a few changing lines, and that goes to hexagram number 15. And then you check the book with the context that you're living in, the question that you're asking the book. And lo and behold, the book answers your question.
yeah.
So there's no causal effect between the coin throwing the coins and the hexagram that they indicate. Well, you could say that's causal, that you throw the coins and they indicate a particular hexagram, but just throwing the coins, that's pure chance. You have six
See.
coins, you throw them down 6 times, or 3 coins, you throw them down 6 times. They give you a certain reading, and then you look it up in the book and you get an answer to your question. So it's similar with astrology. Jung was also very interested in astrology. I know you're going to talk to people about astrology and the relation of those objects that we look up and see in the sky at night, little lights twinkling around up there. We call them planets or um,
Yeah.
stars or something. Uh, they're rocks. They're
Yeah.
various objects in space. What in the world do they have to do with what's going on in human history? Nothing, seemingly. And yet, for thousands of years, people have been looking at those stars and their constellation, how
Mm,
they are arranged in the sky, and what's going on the ground in history. And they've made connections. Oh, when the stars do this, then this seems to be happening in history.
yeah.
And Jung was very interested in that relationship, but he said it's not causal. Those pieces of rock out there in space aren't causing events in human history, but
Yes.
there is some kind of relationship,
Yes. It's a
a
mirror.
meaningful relationship. It's
Right.
synchronistic. That's what he said.
Right. That's okay. That's a really, really beautiful explication and example. The reason why I'm so interested in causality, and I feel like this notion needs to be developed in regards to synchronicity, temporality, individuation, and Jung's ideas, is that causality, as I understand it, directly confers and pertains to why. Yeah, question and the answer why, right? Why, like, why are we here? Like, where are we going? This deeper teleological, ontological, existential question, which is so fundamental. Now, the thing to distinguish, or the differentiation that needs to be drawn, is around what kind of causality we're talking about. When it comes to a linear entropic causality, chain of causality, of course, this doesn't apply. So if Jung is referring to A leads to B, leads to C, leads to whatever, that is a chain of entropic phenomena, right? I drop the egg on the floor and it smashes, right? The egg smashed because I dropped it on the floor, and that happened because someone pushed me over, whatever. This is a linear sequence of cause and effect. Now, that's not what I'm talking about. I think I'm more interested in the notion of an Aristotelian final cause. Yeah, almost like a magnetic attractor at the end of time. Terence McKenna speaks about that, which is in fact maybe magnetizing, causing at a much higher level these archetypal constellations to occur in the first place. Perhaps, and it is a big perhaps, with the intention of breadcrumbing people clues to call them back home. Right? And there may actually be, there may actually be an answer to why the archetypal bearings or signatures of each planet are the way they are, and why there is a why that is then mirrored in our consciousness. Like, I'm sure at some level, like, there is an answer. Like, if you return to the Godhead, there has to be an answer of why. Do you not think? I mean, this is at the edge of sort of,
remind me of a couple of things. Tired at Omega point.
Yes, of course, of course.
So that's a very familiar one. It's a theological view that history has a goal. That's Christian. History does have a goal. There will be an end of time. It's moving in a certain direction, and it's moving for a purpose. So the purposeful direction of history toward a goal, being pulled toward a goal, is the finalistic causation. Now, when
Wolfgang
Pauli discussed evolution, which he does in his, I don't know how familiar your audience will be with Wolfgang Pauli's active imagination called The Piano Lesson.
If you wouldn't mind telling them, in case you're not already going to, yeah.
Yeah. Wolfgang Pauli worked extensively with Jung on creating this theory that Jung calls synchronicity and acausal connecting principle. Wolfgang Pauli was a genius mathematician and physicist involved in the creation of quantum physics, and Nobel Prize winner, and a fellow professor in university at the ETH. Technical University in Zurich. And so Jung knew him for many years, and there's a correspondence been published between them called Atom and Archetype, the letters between Jung and Pauli. Very interesting to see how they work together on this theory of synchronicity. In 1952, I think it was, Pauli did what we call active imagination. He used his imagination to work on a problem that he had, and he states the problem. His active imagination is called The Piano Lesson. He states the problem at the beginning of trying to put together how he understands science using mathematics, the language of mathematics and science, with the language of psychology, which he's been studying now for 20 years by that time. The language of the psyche, which is symbolic, how to put these two together. And he comes up with this image of the piano. You have black keys and you have white keys, and they're working together to create music. Okay, and you have to learn to play the piano. It's a very interesting creation of his. In the course of that, there's a moment where he gives a lecture to some people who come, and they're standing outside his window, and he's lecturing to them about evolution. Okay. what is driving evolution? How does evolution take place? Because he's not a Darwinian. Pauli is not a Darwinian, which would be a cause and effect explanation of evolution, the survival of the species and competition and so on. He says evolution happens in leaps, as he lectures. And these leaps in evolution, in the evolutionary chain, take place arbitrarily, seemingly arbitrarily, unconnected to what's going on in the species or the environment. And they anticipate what the species is going to need in the future. It's like they're directing evolution. So the synchronicities that take place, these chance changes in the genetic makeup of the species, these leaps, are preparing for something that isn't meaningful yet, but will be meaningful down the road.
Yeah.
So that's very close to the notion that you're talking about, final causation. It's going somewhere.
Yeah.
So the existence of the human being as a species is a meaningful event in the history of the cosmos. Okay. That's what it amounts to in the end when you boil it down. And what is the meaning of the human species? Why are we here? This is another why question. Why are human beings in the cosmos? And Jung's answer to that is to make it conscious, that we bring a type of consciousness that the universe needs, that the maker of the universe needs, the God factor needs, in order to become conscious of itself. So Jung says God needs man to become conscious of itself. God needs human beings to become conscious of God itself. So what we have been given through this evolutionary process is a type of consciousness that is, we have so far have found nowhere else in the universe that may exist, but we have it. And that is to make what we see and experience conscious in a particular way. That's our contribution to this cosmic experiment that we're all living. And we're here for that reason. So that's a kind of finalist explanation of evolution and the existence of human beings.
Do you agree with that? I just read, I'm reading Memory Streams Reflections at the moment, and I'm at the end of it, and I actually just read that paragraph yesterday. His sort of surmising comment on what he thinks it's all about.
Yes.
And the fact that he thinks exactly we're here to, it's all about consciousness, and we're here to create this, like the self-awareness. It's God returning to itself in a way. Where I disagree with him is that I think there are a multitudinous entities, energies, beings in the universe that are way more advanced than us. And indeed, like deities, like archetypal deities, if you will, like creator beings, like a cascading hierarchy of creator beings, us being part of that hierarchy because we are creator beings. And we're pretty low. I think we're pretty low down on the list, kind of in terms of the levels of consciousness. I think we're pretty low down. So rather than seeing us at this kind of pinnacle or apex emerging upwards to, no, I think we're being like looked down upon by these magnificent beings beyond any order of time or space that we can comprehend, who are looking at us like little tiny children, very, very, very far behind. So I think that's where I would disagree with Jung, but the overall premise that consciousness is returning to itself, obviously I agree with. I don't know what your thoughts are on all of that.
Well, I stay with Jung on that, but I'm open to experience. Now, I know you've had experiences of some of these beings. I haven't, but if they come to me, and I know other people who've had similar experiences, but I have to stay with my own. My own tells me that in the human unconscious, there are figures who are more than we experience in our conscious life. Okay, So these figures that you experience that come to you and speak to you, or you get transmissions, Jung would say are figures of the unconscious, archetypal images that we can experience in dreams or active imagination. I've had some dreams like that. And I know people who've had waking dreams in which these figures appear to them and they have, interaction with them. But what Jung would say is that the unconscious is manifesting itself. So he puts it into this bag called the unconscious.
Yeah.
And that keeps it on a psychological level rather than putting it on an ontological level.
Yeah.
But he does say that in the unconscious, there is no time. You can go backwards and forwards in time. And so that the unconscious is sort of godlike in the sense that, the notion of God is that everything happens in the now, past, present, and future. It's all present in the now.
Yeah.
That's God's mind. And in the unconscious, it's similar to that.
I literally just wrote simultaneous time. I just wrote simultaneous time there, and then you just said that.
I think we're tuned in.
Well, see, no, this is perfect. It's already happening. It's synchronicity in action. You wrote, I believe it was in this essay on temporality, that in the unconscious, time does not exist as it does in our chronologically controlled consciousness, which is what you've just said. I'd like to point out also to the listeners that every law in physics, time moves backwards and forwards, and every single law in physics, bar one, which is the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy and it's irreversible, which is to do with matter. Consciousness is immaterial. So I'm wondering, with regards to this, and you've just brought it up, so obviously is sort of asking to be explored further, what do you think the implications are in terms of our understanding of fate, of memory, of possibility, individuation, and, because Jung spoke about being guided by the hand of fate. In terms of this, I don't know, timelessness, the conscious, the unconscious, what are your thoughts on this, the implications of temporality for our teleological unfolding of individuation?
Well, it relates to synchronicity. Jung writes about the hand above my head that has created my destiny, something like that. The hand above my head. And on the front of his house, he put up the Delphic motto, called or not called, God is present. So he was very aware of God's presence in one's life. This has to do with constellations of archetypal energies and synchronicities as you look back on your life and you see that there are certain moments, decisive moments that changed your life. And they usually came about through meaningful coincidence. It wasn't something you were necessarily counting on or planning or had created or invented. They happened to you. That's how I discovered Jung. It just happened. And reading Memories, Dreams, Reflections changed my life's direction in an essential way. And I look back on that as a synchronistic moment and a moment in my destiny. So I think as we look back on our lives and we see the pattern that our lives have taken, these meaningful coincidences, synchronicities at certain critical moments, it seems like this guiding hand has been taking care of us, has been leading us, has been directing us. Now, the theory of synchronicity has two aspects. One is this psychic material confluence, coming together, falling together of the psyche's needs and material events that occur at more or less the same time, and that bring meaning. But the other more general meaning of synchronicity is that there are coincidences in the world, not necessarily between psyche and world, but between objects in the world or happenings in the world that give evolution or the cosmos its direction, the birth of stars and so on. So synchronicity can be applied in this specific way of psyche matter, meaningful coincidence, or material, meaningful coincidence. And what is matter? There's that law of entropy, but there's also negentropy. I have a colleague and friend, Nathan Short-Salant, who wrote a book called The Paradox of, what is it? The Paradox of Entropy and Negentropy, or something like that. It's paradoxical because you have both. You have the running down of energy in material objects, and you also have the creation of energy. Creativity and entropy running down work together somehow within the material world as well. So underlying the material world, there are energies that, the physicists, and especially in quantum mechanics and so on, try to probe and penetrate and understand, that are very obscure, but seem to go in both directions.
It's interesting because converse to entropy, we experience syntropy. Now, I don't know if is that connected to negentropy? I'm not. You've mentioned this negentropy to me before, actually, in another conversation you and I had, and I forget if it's equivalent to syntropy. You know what syntropy is?
Syntropy, tell me what syntropy
Well,
is.
syntropy is basically it's the opposite of entropy. It's the emergence of highly coherent, organized, ever complex, connected structures. So an example would be, I mean, like everything that's manifested in the universe since the Big Bang, like the fact that nebulous gases became stars, produce all the elements, create solar systems and complex carbon-based life such as our own. Everything is moving in this direction of greater interconnected organization.
Yeah, I think it's the
same thing. And
yeah.
I think I might prefer the word syntropy because of that prefix syn, S-Y-N, as in like all together, because synchronicity, syntropy. And in fact, maybe that's a nice segue for us to explore the word synchronicity a little bit. And again, that tension between Chronos and Kairos, because obviously synchronicity literally means Chronos, that's like all time, right? That's kind of what it means etymologically.
At the same time.
At the same time, sorry. Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah. I guess, okay, yeah, at the same time. Could we explore that a bit more? Like again, the relationship between Chronos and Kairos, with regards to synchronicity. And I think
the word Chronos is definitely embedded in synchronicity.
Yeah, I guess I just want to explore that a bit more because we've mentioned that Chronos is linear time without any meaning. Kairos is the meaningful moment, and yet Chronos is embedded in synchronicity. So can we just tease that out a bit?
So again, Hippocrates, every Kairos is a Chronos, but not every Chronos is a Kairos.
Yes.
He had a problem with Chronos, with a time factor in synchronicity. Right. He said, I don't have a problem with meaning, but I have a problem with time. Because in physics, time is very exactly measured. I mean, very, very precisely measured. And so if you're saying at exactly the same time,
right,
you're going to get into trouble because sometimes the psyche is ready, but the material aspect doesn't appear for a day or two or a week, and then they fall together. So the time factor bothered Pauli. He didn't want to relate it so tightly to Chronos. He wanted to say that within our life experience, there are these Kairos moments, these moments of meaning that you can't explain causally in the ABCD fashion. And you have to say they just happen. So if you take Chronos out of synchronicity, just say an acausal connecting principle, that would have been Pauli's preference. Leave Chronos to the side a bit. Jung wanted to put it in there, I think, because, we do live in our consciousness, in our ego consciousness, in our cultural world, in that frame, we live in time. Especially in modern times, in Switzerland, you live in Switzerland.
I sure do.
clocks. The train runs on time. The tram runs on time.
Yeah.
If you're not
Yeah,
in
yeah. They
contact
run a
with
tight
what's
ship over
happening,
here.
very tight. But put yourself back into caveman times. There are no
Mm,
clocks. Time
mm.
would be experienced quite differently.
Yeah.
Oh, it's getting a little cooler now, or the sun isn't shining as much as it used to. It's much more imprecise. So Kronos wasn't so tightly measured, but still, people, as they became conscious, and I'm sure animals are very aware of it, birds are aware of it.
Yeah.
In the spring, they come out and start chirping, and so on. Animals are aware of time. Plants are aware of time. Time is a serious factor in our lives, not necessarily with the precision that we now live in time. We are locked in time. We are prisoners of time, and
Mm,
it's important to break out of that in certain moments as well, to realize that we aren't totally locked into temporality. There
mm,
is
mm,
something
mm,
like
mm,
atemporality,
mm,
eternity, timelessness, and
mm,
also exists in experience.
mm, mm.
One can experience the timeless in certain moments, awakening and enlightenment, and you see the relativity of the temporal
Yeah.
in those moments. Yeah.
Again, I guess it depends on how we want to define temporality and indeed time, which is a deeply enigmatic and sort of profound concept. Time is not, it's not easily defined. I think it's very interesting that I unconsciously just erroneously attributed the prefix sin to mean all time when it actually means at the same time, which you just
Mhm.
said, because it's a really ardent, intuitive, like a deeply intuitive felt belief of mine that all time is now, like all time is simultaneous. Okay. So I see time as this hyperdimensional object, like a multi-leveled object that's all happening now. You and I in these physical bodies having this conversation are at one level of that object in the densest frequency of it. Yeah, because we're in physical bodies, right? But that actually all time is now. So every aspect of the universe, of the multiverse, it's all now. Imagine it like a sphere, right? It's like the entirety of being. Like it really encapsulates the paradox of being and becoming. It's like all becoming is held, all change, all progress, all evolution is held within that sphere that is eternal and all now. So to come back to synchronicity and everything and Kairos and everything we've been talking about and meaning and archetypes, I very much see the synchronicitous moment, that moment when like the meaning erupts. And it might, again, to go to Pauli and his issue with this, the temporal issue he sees. Because if he's looking at time as a measurement, of course he's going to have an issue. He's not experiencing time poetically and as a duration, which is how I see it. What's that Blake quote? What is it?
A grain of sand,
Thank you. A
eternity in a
grain of
grain of
sand.
sand,
Yes.
eternity
To
in a
see
grain
how,
of sand.
yes. What is it? What is it? I
Yeah,
just had it. To see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Thank you.
there you are. Yeah.
Sorry, it was like just that. For me, that's time is very elastic. It expands and contracts, and you can reduce it to Planck time as a kind of unit of measurement, but that's not actually what time is. That's just a measurement of time, but that's not what time is. And I think that Kairos moment, for me anyway, it's when simultaneous time, so not timelessness, but like all time, erupts. And it's almost like you see the past, present, and future it erupts into Chronos, which is a line,
Mhm.
wherein the past, present, and the future are not all coexisting. I'm here now on this day, not like 10 years ago. That was 10 years ago.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That was we're literally confined to this timeline because of the
Yeah.
physical thing. So for me, there's something about synchronicity in this Jungian sense that is like it transcends the physical form. And it's like all dimensions of the universe crowd in. And I guess that's where the archetypal piece comes in, because that's part of this unseen, deeper phenomena of the universe, deeper structural ordering of the cosmos erupts kind of emerges from the depths, or conversely comes kind of cascades down from, from higher realms. It's both. And it meets. It's like where heaven and earth sort of meet, and we experience like that Blakean moment where you see a world in a grain of sand.
Mm-hmm.
That's for me what it is, and that's why I think it's so important and vital for people on their journey of becoming and coming home. Yeah, this Jungian individuating journey, because it allows you to see the whole.
Well, I think what you've described as the experience of the self in its you could say most essential aspect. Jung was very fond of the mandala. It contains everything. It has a center. Well, if you go into that center, it's a point of light and enlightenment, and the all is there, and the now is there, and so I think Jung had that intuition also. But living in these two worlds at the same time, I think, is the challenge, isn't it? We live in the temporal world, as you say, in the body 10 years ago isn't today. Our bodies change in the course of time. So we live in temporality, but we also have this experience of the non-temporal, the non-dual, the center of the self, and how to bring those two together. It's a huge challenge to live that. That relationship within our everyday consciousness, let's say, to carry it. I think it's very important. It takes the sting out of a lot of what happens to us in temporality.
Yeah.
Gives us a perspective and a much deeper feeling about meaning and life and, gnosis, the Gnostic experience of being lost in an alien world and longing to be home in the place where we come from.
Yeah.
But I think the Gnostics lived with that knowledge that we're in both situations, in a sense, And to strengthen that experience of timelessness, because most people don't go there very much.
No,
Maybe
they don't.
Occasionally they have an experience in a special moment or in a church or a temple or something, but to carry it around with you in your life, everyday life, is, I think, wonderful if you can manage it. It's a big work.
Totally. Well, I think, the real crisis of our times is a crisis of meaninglessness.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Which comes directly back to Kairos and what we're talking about, Kairos being the epitome of like meaning.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And I think you spoke a lot about the movement of the ages of epochs, right? And you spoke about the age of Pisces and Christ and the fish kind of configuring this Piscean epoch and the movement to the age of Aquarius. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with kind of astrological archetypes, but the age of Aquarius is about collective consciousness. Yeah, it is about more of a unification of consciousness. And I think beyond the sort of the mystical enlightenment of the individual, which I'm fully an advocate for, because I think this is how we'll change the world. I'm also really interested in how we as a collective at like a societal level can start tuning into synchronistic phenomena, how we as a collective can tune into the mythopoetic dimension of reality. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on moments of great cultural upheaval, right? Like, for example, the end of the 18th century, you have the American War of Independence, you have the French Revolution. This was a very, very potent time, archetypally speaking. And we are entering back into one of these moments. This is a very liminal moment. This is a threshold moment we're in. Do you think at these moments of particular, like profound transformation, that Kairos, or there's some sort of archetypal constellation in the field at a much greater collective level that's sort of influencing Kairos, or like wants to be felt at a more collective level, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Sure, I think so. I think it's springing up like mushrooms here and there. My daughter's got it, you've got it. That generation, I think, and people are talking about it a lot, in various forums and contexts. So I think it is emerging. But as you say, we're in the transitional period right now. And I think you can look ahead to something like that emerging more strongly in the future in the collective mind, the collective psyche, as we enter into the next age of human history. I certainly hope so. I have a pretty strong feeling that that's where it's going. And then there are moments of regression and there are moments of resistance. But I think they'll be passing. These sparks of light will begin emerging as a much stronger feature of the collective attitude. I think it's necessary. I think the species will come to its senses and see that without this, we're doomed. We have got to find a way to be much more connected with each other and with what's going on in the planet and in the universe than we have been. A man brought Jung a dream. Let me just close with this, and it's along these lines. It's a famous dream among Jungians, but what his dream was is that he was digging in the earth and digging out rocks and building a little temple for himself beside the quarry. And then he got up out of the quarry and he looked around and he saw that other people were doing the same thing in other areas around. And when he brought this to Jung, said, "Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's the new religion that's being formed. And people are doing it here, and they're doing it there, and they're doing it there. And eventually it will form into a new consensus and a new attitude." And the man said, "How do you know that?" He said, "Oh, I know it from people's dreams. And you know how long it will take?" "No, how long?" Jung said, 600 years. I hope it comes sooner,
I
but
have so
that
many
was his
chills.
estimate. And this was about 100 years ago, well, maybe 75 years ago, that he made that statement. Jung was very worried about the crisis that the world was entering into because of the massive power that these big states now have. These countries have nuclear weapons, but he wasn't yet aware of the climate crisis that is upon us and other crises that we're facing. So let's hope it doesn't take 600 years. We need it much sooner.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I felt quite emotional actually as you were saying that because I can feel it coming through us. I know it's been coming through me, this notion of some sort of meta religion that is wishing itself to be born, something which synthesizes all like traditions of truth that have ever existed and unifies it without precluding any tradition. There is something like so emergent and so beautiful coming to form through humanity. And I know that it won't be realized by the time I leave this earth, but I know that I'm here to play a part. And there's something so, just as you were talking, I just felt this great sense of the magnitude of it, the magnitude of this cosmic consciousness, which so supersedes like the ephemerality of one human life, but how we play a part and how we our lives rise and fall in and out. We come in and out of existence in so many different forms, so this consciousness can evolve itself. It's just so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing your expertise, and it was really amazing to speak with you. It was really enriching. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Arabella, and I wish you all the best. You're certainly doing a wonderful service to us all by creating these podcasts.
Thank you. We'll
Take
speak
care.
soon. Bye.
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 Bye.